Insurance. You are. Very easy for implementation there. We're going to
everybody's attention. I was watching people and everybody was just focused on you and the presentation. All right, let's questions. I know everybody's got questions, although he hit most of my questions already. Just raise your hand. We'll bring you a microphone. Come on. You got him.
That was fantastic. Ready to go see it right now. Yes. I also wondered, do people that work there also pay, or is it free to people that work at the center?
Hey, yeah, so one thing that we talked about that, we're talking
Represents Watauga County has done a tremendous job in looking at ways to help with childcare. And one thing is to offer free childcare. Some centers are offering free childcare. Since we're offering at a discount rate to all of our employees to keep it even, we charge everyone the same price. We do a discount if you have a second. You know, one thing I didn't stress on, I think I put up there more babies on the way. We have currently 2 employees that are having second or third children. And they have shared with me, you know, privately that one of the reasons is that now they know they have childcare. And that was something that was a struggle. You know, even in the beginning days of knowing this center was coming, we had an individual that decided to move forward because truly childcare, as you all know, is a decision, a burden, you know, from the cost standpoint of them having, you know, either one child or multiple children. So again, more babies on the way was one of my snippets. I didn't go across within that. We have 2 employees right now that are currently pregnant, either have children there or will be having children. Through child.
I'm just, yeah, this is really exciting. So I guess my question is, do you have any suggestions for what the state could do to be a partner in an effort such as this, or to try to encourage other municipalities to set up childcare centers? I've heard the second example. I mean, you're clearly running a loss. So financially, I guess short term, it's not working in your favor, and cost has to be something that's taken into account. I was just curious as to what you think the state can do to be a partner with you.
You know, in the last 14 or so months, to your point, the number one hangup has been the cost. And so as other entities, other counties, other towns, other cities have reached out and said, hey, and we've had a number of ones come up and take a visit, the cost piece is where they get hung up. And we understand that, you know, so it's government's different. And I try to share that, you know, not getting political one side or the other. We lose money on every service that we provide outside of the tax fund. That's the only individual in our town that makes any money is our tax fund. Everyone else loses money. And so we try to emphasize we're spending a great deal of money already to provide services that are not profitable. We're providing a lot of benefits that are, as you put up there, I put up there $2 million worth of benefits to be able to recruit and retain these employees. We see this as a benefit. It's $100,000, $120,000 is what we're projecting this upcoming year. But again, it's hard to put the return on the investment exactly. We know that it's working because we can see the anecdotal, you know, the returns on the anecdotal side of it before it's looking with, you know, being fully staffed. But we know that the cost of one police officer, again, is, you know, $100,000 for us to recruit and pay that employee and train that individual. But the hang up has been the cost factor because it's something that's different. At the same time, I would sell to the public is that you're not going to stop paying for health insurance probably because you know what the impacts are going to be. Our health insurance costs are well exceeding $1 million. So we're just trying to kind of correlate the two together.
Okay. Can you talk about, so you said you started with 6 to 8, but you wanted to max out at 20. So if will 20 fit where your space is? And then what would happen if you got to the great fortune of having more students than you had space? Have y'all talked about as a city, and it may not be because it sounds like your city staff is limited numbers wise, but just what would happen if y'all talked through that?
Yeah, so once the center's open, again, depending on the ratio, we're probably about 22 to 24 children can fit within the center. So we're about halfway there. So we haven't really talked about the next steps. Again, we're only 14 months into it. And again, I think our staff, if we got to that point, I think that's a fantastic thing. The council is fully on board. The original council was on board. This council is even more on board with it. They see it. We've had some get-togethers down there. We had the ribbon cutting and some other things, but we've purposely had the council down for a couple things now. Different events down there for them to see it. Senator Heiss was able to come back in January for the Watauga Child Care Advocacy Day. Samantha Stoll was there, and some others in the room I know were there as well. And they had a chance to see our council again. They see they see the recognition of it, and I think they see the positive. They hear the stories. I share with our employees when you see them, share these stories with them because that's a positive thing. Share them with the community as well. So we haven't really talked about the next steps, but again, we're about halfway there, and I don't know with our numbers of employees, we'd have to have a lot of things,
Yeah.
which would be a good thing. Representative Crowe.
So just a couple of questions. One, regarding the cost of this program, back to Senator Choji's question, is it the the startup costs that are a barrier or it's the ongoing costs. Thank you. And then second, is there a way, have you all looked at how you can monetize the value of the benefit in terms of, you have better retention, you have better, it's hard to monetize morale, but anyway, the cost to replace these employees, if they do leave for this reason, have you been able to monetize the value of the benefit so that you can say, well, it's worth investing this much because of X dollars?
Absolutely. First question, the startup cost again, we ended up spending 75,000, I think, overall, and that was really for materials, that's for furniture, and the labor was somewhat free, so to speak. They were town employees doing a lot of work. And a lot volunteered to do it on the weekends and some of those things as well because they understood the importance of it. It's the ongoing cost. And part of our budget process that we're soon to present next Tuesday is trying to put together some numbers like that. And so what I put cost of employees, police, fire, that type of thing. So from a recruitment and retention standpoint, what does it cost for 1 year for these employees? What does it cost to recruit these employees? What does it cost for us to be short or have, lapse within these employees? And so we're putting those data points together to help kind of share from a budgetary standpoint, again, because we're about to put up there that we're in need of $120,000 this year. But our council will tell the public, and they're kind of that first front of people coming and complaining if they're talking about taxpayer money being spent to it. And they utilize these police officers. They utilize our police chief as being one that they kind of hone in on the most because he's a younger individual with children that came to us that we typically had not had luck. We had been kind of a landing point for folks that were ready to retire or late in their career. And here we've got this younger individual coming, and it was solely based on the fact that he was able to provide childcare. He was with a sister agency with us and had been up through the ranks within that. So it's hard to put an exact number. It is, but what we try to do is share some of these different positions, some of the different costs, and what that looks like. And if we lose one of them, even one of them, more than likely is going to be the same cost as what we're putting up here each year. And that's on the police side, the fire side, public works, you name it.
When you get that, I'll just project, when you get those data points, would you be willing to share them back with this committee?
Absolutely.
Great, thank you.
We've also been fortunate to be working with Duke University. They're working currently on a case study of this center. And so we've shared a lot of the same data with them. And so I think they're putting something together. I think in the next week or two, they should have that case study ready for the public as well. Samantha's giving me the thumbs up in the back. So I can share that as well within that. Real quick, the Fox Den. So on opening day, the ribbon was being cut. They named it the Fox Den after my last name. That was a surprise. And that's why I put it up there in quotation.
Now you're going to make sure it goes to for the rest. Shane, we're right on time. I know Amy's got a question. Are you going to stay through lunch with us?
I can, absolutely.
You can? Good.
Yes,
We'll grab him and
very quick question. Any complaints or requests for 24-hour care versus the daytime?
The only one that we would have would be on the fire side. Our police shifts are typically 6 to 6. And so we're able to kind of work through that with the ones that have it. On the fire side, there's a little bit more of a shift in that. But currently the fire individuals that are utilizing it have spouses that are able to pick up the call. And so no technical request, really just, I think it would be easier for one or two, but it's not mandatory. So we have spouses that are able to assist.
Thank you.
let's give Shane a big hand. Thank you. Stay around. I've got some questions. All right. I'd like to call on Rhonda Rivers to lead us through a reflection exercise to make sure we're on track and producing big ideas and recommendations. There's going to be about a 10-minute work session, 5-minute of idea sharing period, and be sure the Post-it notes that are around it where you should have so you can make some notes. Thank you, Rhonda.
Thank you, Senator Berger. Thank you for the presentation, Shane. That was so invigorating. So we have heard from Reverend Jackie and from Director Rachel, and we've heard from Town Manager for Roaring Rock, Shane. Listen, this is what it is all about. That's why we're here together today. Shane, I just wanted to thank you for using your experience to propel and identify what your town needs. I love what you said in your leading slide, is that this isn't about This is about families and what people need. This isn't about the way you were able to say that what is it that our community need? What is it that our people need? How do I use this to strengthen our community based on your own past experiences as a child, seeing what your mother experienced and how you learned from that, and from your wife being an educator? Shane realized and decided to take heed to the call to figure out what he needed to do to strengthen his community, and realizing that it started with investing in our youngest children. So clearly Blowing Rock is, the town of Blowing Rock is an employer of choice, and we can see why. So I applaud you on that, being created in the momentum that you've started. Wonderful models, wonderful examples, and for Lockhart Child Development Center to say we have space, the church to say we have space, and Lockhart to say we have need, and people in the community to come together and say, how do we identify this? So what we want you to do now is to get in some small work groups. We have a few members from the division that are here. We'd like for them to spread their knowledge and love with some of these work groups. If you can work with just the 4 people that are sitting closest to you, and to brainstorm and identify creative ways, what we've learned and how we can lean into some of these concepts that Lockhart has shared and that Shane has shared, and what we can do one community at a time. So clearly, there are a lot happening in North Carolina, but prior to now, and us having this opportunity to bring the business community together, to bring our elected officials together, to bring educators, to bring parents together, are we finally putting our brains together, our creative ideas together, and saying, we can take this and we can make it big. What is working, we should expand throughout our state. So let's take about 10 minutes, if you will. And how many division representatives we have? They're pretty talented, but I can't cut them in half. So maybe they'll bounce around. We have 3. Okay, so if the 4 of you will work together and put some ideas together on your sticky, that we can just kind of figure out and identify how we can use those ideas to expand on that concept, to build from that, what resources are needed in different areas, and then we can just work in some small groups at our tables. Is that pretty clear about what we're doing? All right, so we're gonna take those examples, identify resources and ways we can
Just sign us up so that, because I know if
to make it easy for everyone.
count off or do something.
So 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. You feel like you're in school again? 1, 2, are you?
Yes.
Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, so let's get to work and let's share some ideas, stickies, so we can do that. Okay, yep. 2, 3, 4, 5. And I'll
Well, I like all the whites get together all day. Yeah, yeah.
I want to do some speech. Yes, I can do it real quick while we. Started.
This is Kimberly Mouse.
Unless it's bothering you.
Did you add? Again.
That's an also had a big fun. It wasn't, we were trying to.
Yes, that's right.
Space.
My sister, when I was sitting with.
Have a microphone that brings around.
It doesn't take rocket science to make the observation.
I rarely get to see you in person, but yes, virtually.
Came up with.
Yeah. There's one, so yeah. It's still saying. They may have like for this. I don't get. Insurance. Air rate. Yeah.
So I.
Was it?
Coming back in about like on Sunday.
My family has a place in Long Rock. Somewhere. One person. Also. And I just think, God, what do you think? Like it's always, you guys, you're like, oh my God.
And when I first.
Less stressful. Yeah, yes, for a lot of students.
Right.
Julie's about to give me the narrative.
I think there's a lot to
Feel your.
I know, I mean, there's some.
Hours, very much out here. And I think still and they're kind of in that, do we want that or do we want to let someone else run it? And so we heard two examples where and this county said, we'll just up and going and we'll help support, you know, some of our. But how that decision was made.
A little bit of.
Three of our 4 centers, especially in downtown, is. So what is it out there?
Yeah, you just have to talk to worker groups. It's just.
I didn't know it was having a job. Or city building, it was just.
Yeah.
Right. So they, how, you know.
We already has the.
Right. The building fits the second grade of life. It should be on the second floor. We don't expect any money out of that. Of course, that's not service. Respect to my.
There's not a lot of talk.
Okay, wait a minute. You better. So we had a. It's a building code. Boards to, yeah, so. We started.
So about 1 more minute, wrap up your final thoughts for now.
On the benefits, as they advertise on the job, when you say it's 6 weeks. Yeah. But I went. How to take that. License. It was so much a good idea, so I was like, well, what's like today? It may have come from pay up. Yes. It's problem solving it. There's barriers, maybe, I mean, what if it starts storming, but provided that there's. Like for me to think out is, you know, any people where they are in development, use developments, where you can see that opportunity. What's your question? It may be something different.
That's not a case for all employers, but it could be. Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe have enough staff. The only thing that can be most of it is that's the part we don't. Yeah, taxes on.
Yeah, some of the, so ultimately.
Yeah, there's building, so, and that would be based.
To community, some experts.
Value. We don't have as much as been licensed previously that has. Proposed, she said, but one-time license, that facility running. Likely would not be difficult. Really great, yeah.
So I heard people.
Like when would the building get built? The really big.
We all come back together. I'm so happy to see this synergy in session. I see this through Barbara Shane. Shane, your brain is gonna be utilized. It's pretty exciting. If we have one or two people that can share for like 30 seconds apiece, it will be great, because what I've heard just walking around as a provider, as a mom, is someone who really wants to see our communities, one community at a time, let Blowing Rock thrive. It's pretty encouraging. So I know the power is in this room. It's really exciting. What do people like to share? You like to share?
Jen has voluntold me from our group. We wrote down 2 questions or thoughts. One is, how can Shane share his story with additional municipalities? And then the second is, what public sector ideas from both of these 2 do translate to the private sector? And then what are differences, and if that model was translating?
So we can dig deeper into that and work. So you have that. I don't know if it goes on one of these. You have it. Okay, please post that so we can continue to expand on that. One other person. I think we have time for one other share. There's so many great ones. So please make sure your sticky notes and your thoughts make it to the chart paper. Anyone else?
I would say that, we talked about the consistency and the commitment to keep it going. That
Yes.
To push through, it would take 14 months. We might only be serving, be serving 8 folks by then, but that we'll build upon it, that it takes time, but stick with it. And families need to know that there's that commitment there.
Yes, because the example that Shane gave, how he's providing a public good, it is really, I can't imagine what the culture of Blowing Rock is right now. The parents dropping their child off someplace close to work, being able to be engaged with them, that changes the mindset of families. It encourages them, the population of Blowing Rock is growing, because they're happy, because they feel a sense of community, and they realize that the people that are leading Blowing Rock care about them, their children and their families. So this is pretty exciting. So we'll continue with this. And that's it for me, Senator.
Thank you, Rhonda. I really appreciate that. We are going to break for lunch. Lunch is right outside. Let me lead us in a prayer. Lord, we thank you for this day. What a beautiful, beautiful day it is. Thank you that we can be here at the Rural Center, be with all of our conversations, give us great thoughts and insight. And bless this food. We ask this in Jesus' name.
Amen.
My first, right out.
Good job.
You've been there part-time. Mark's Club is like this, he comes out, helps out, runs down hall. I'll see you. We're ready to go down to the.
You know. I know.
I was just saying. I mean, to be honest. Yes. I mean.
2 minutes to get there.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
retention, compensation, and supports for early childhood teachers and staff. I also want to make a special acknowledgement of Teacher Appreciation Week. We do all need to tell our teachers we appreciate them and everything that they do for kids. The people who deliver early childhood education prepare our children for success in school and in life and help adults participate in our workforce. But too often, they do so from an empty cup. Let's stay focused on solutions that uplift this profession, make it easier for dedicated people to enter it, and ensure the best and the brightest can stay in it. Please take note of the Post-its at your seat. If there's not Post-its at your seat, see me. We'll get you Post-its. And use them to write down any big ideas or recommendations that we can use toward our report at the end of June. I want to acknowledge Erica Palmer Smith, Executive Director, a longtime friend, Executive Director of North Carolina Child, to lead a special group discussion with special guests, the teachers. Welcome, Erica.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you, Senator Bergen. Good morning. Good morning. Well, like Senator Bergen mentioned, this happens to be Teacher Appreciation Week, and I'm honored to lead this discussion and to help acknowledge the commitment and dedication of a few of our state's early care and education teachers. So I'd like to start by introducing our guests. Could you each just raise your hand whenever I introduce you? Angela Harris with the Child Development Center at First Presbyterian Church of Raleigh. Charlene Mooring with the Child Development Center at the First Presbyterian Church of Raleigh. Joy Brewington at the Jordan Child and Family Enrichment Center. And Charlisha Williams with the Jordan Child and Family Enrichment Center. So first, could you all just share a little bit about yourselves, what ages you teach, and how long you've been teaching?
Again, my name is Joy. I'm very grateful to be here. Thank you all for having me. I'm a lifelong North Carolina resident. I have been teaching since I received a teaching license. I can't even recall what year. But I started in the daycare setting. I transitioned out of that to earn a livable wage through education. And that was the 1999 journey until present. So I've been in almost every aspect of early childhood.
Yeah, my name is Charlicia. Thank you for having me. I have actually recently transitioned out of the classroom, but I am still yet in the classroom modeling and still teaching. While I was in the classroom, I taught 3-year-olds, which was not too long ago. And I have been in the early childhood field for 27 years.
I'm Angela Harris. I've been in childcare for about 30 years. I've been at First Pres since they opened 23 years ago, and I work with infants.
Hello, I'm Charlene Mooring. I've worked in childcare since 1999. I graduated college in 2001, and right after that, I started working as an administrator in childcare for a short stint. But then I went back to the classroom at First Pres, and that's where I've been ever since, with the infants.
Thank you. So at our first task force meeting, each of us as members were asked to talk about our why for being passionate about early childhood. So we'd love it if you could all share your whys for becoming early childhood educators. What made you passionate about early childhood?
My parents were elementary ed teachers. My father went on to be a principal. My privilege in that environment allowed me to see what teachers do. While neither of my parents were early educators themselves, I began to notice in my 4th grade the advantages I had to be prepared for school and some of the disadvantages that my counterparts in my class had. They didn't always have their things. Okay, this became something I wanted to make a change in high school, and that was my why for going into early childhood education. I became aware of the need for equity in a variety of areas.
So my why happened I wouldn't say accidentally, but I was in college. I was majoring in music education, minoring in accounting. That was my track. While I was in college, I started working at an early childhood development center, and I absolutely fell in love with it. Um, I noticed that there was a great need. There was a great need for emotional. There was also a great need for to set a foundation for early education. And from that point on, I had been in this field.
My why is when I got ready to start my family, I decided to go into childcare. And some of the families that were there with the little ones, I fell in love with it, and I've been there ever since.
For me, growing up, I was always driven towards children. I wouldn't say back then that I knew I was going to work in childcare, but I always wanted to like work in like pediatric dentistry or something with children. And so I actually went to college for pediatric nursing, but that didn't last long. I switched over to, I still wanted to work with children, so I switched my major to child development. And being able to have the assignment of volunteering in a child care center while I was in school reaffirmed for me that, yes, this is what I wanted to do. So I probably still would have changed it if I didn't have the opportunity to actually go in a classroom and see what the job ahead of me looked like.
We're glad you didn't change it. Can you share with us what you love most about it, what you love most about educating young children?
I work with the infants, so for me, it's like I'm getting a fresh start. I get to be the first person that they depend on with outside of their parents. So for me, that's just a big deal. I fall in love with them and they fall in love with me, and how can you just not love that every day?
Each of you answer.
For me, I like doing everything. That's why I work with the infants, because I want to do everything for them. I want to feed them. I want to do everything. And then at the end, you get rewarded. Because when it's time for them to graduate, they'll go up there and tell you their name and how old they are, and I'm graduating today. So the babies cry all year. The teachers cry at the end.
I would say that educating young children, for me, it's laying the foundation. It is laying the academic foundation in the smallest of ways, but these are concepts and things they're learning, be it social, emotional, being cognitive, be it math, be it whatever skills they're learning in early education. These skills they take on to hopefully post-secondary education. And for me, that is very rewarding to see. And also meeting the needs of the families, because we not only meet the needs of the children, but we have families who have needs as well. So that also is rewarding for me.
You all said a lot of what I would say. My passion is revolving right now for many years. I've had a long career. It's revolving around assisting families in finding special education services, be that in the private or public sector, and helping every child have the opportunity to get that leg up, as you referred to, before their next levels of education, and make sure everything's in place. So I'm very passionate about assisting families for the next steps needed.
Thank you. Early care and education is critical for the well-being and preparedness of our children, and it's critical for our economy. But it's not an easy job to do. It's not always the easiest profession to stay in. Can you talk about any obstacles that get in the way of your ability to thrive in the profession, or ways you think leaders can ensure that more teachers like you can stay in the early childhood education careers?
Being frank, an obstacle to stay in the career field can be your energy. You have to have an intrinsic desire to continue to return to this sort of labor. And while I am passionate for it, I chose to stay in it after the pandemic and carry on. In terms of being supported by leaders, epic value of that cannot be stressed well enough. One thing that was helpful during the pandemic was the removal of the concept of childcare as a daycare setting. We don't care for the days. I heard that switch during the health briefings early in the pandemic. And while we're far past that, that connotation has shifted a lot. And that's been very beneficial to keeping teachers in the field, the acknowledgement of what it is that we're doing and the importance of every detail of our work.
For me, to keep it practical, an obstacle being in this field over 27 years. As I listened to Mr. Fox speak this morning, it resonated with me when he said he was the child of a single parent. I was a single parent raising 2 young boys in this field. And quite frankly, an obstacle for me was the financial aspect, making a livable wage. Thankfully, I was and still am a member of a wonderful, or an employee of a wonderful organization, Methodist Home for Children, who believes in every child deserving a chance. But I would, to be quite frank, that was definitely an obstacle for me. Believing that children deserve a chance and having my heart in it, I didn't want to leave. I did not leave. And here I stand still in the field. But to be quite frank and honest, that was a major obstacle for me.
For me, I love what I do. Out of all the years I've been in childcare, I probably can count on one hand how many times I've called that. I just feel like even if I'm out, I have surgery, I just feel like I have to go to work because those babies need me. They need me. I would even look at them on the app when I was out of work.
I feel like one of the obstacles that a lot of teachers face is the pay. But I feel like I'm fortunate to work for First Presbyterian, which is a nonprofit organization that is able to pour into the teachers as far as not only their pay, but benefits and things that matter to a person like me who has a family, who doesn't rely on any other assistance other than what I'm working for. So being able to have those benefits and things like that is a big deal. I think a lot of centers are privately owned and are for profit. And when you're like that, you may not want to do for your staff as much as a nonprofit center will. So for me, that's a big deal. And I think that's why I stay, because I feel like I'm getting something back as much as I'm giving.
Do we have questions from task force members? Rhonda.
I don't have a question. I just want to say thank you. Thank you to every one of you. I can tell you're doing your heart's work, and I hope those of you that are not providers can see that these ladies are worth so much more than what we would be paying a Chick-fil-A or Target. What they have an opportunity to do. I can just hear that you are such a value to these families, the way you're talking about the children and their families. And Ms. Andrew, the lady in the middle that said you worry about the kids, but you're not there. That's what it's all about. So I just hope you know just how much you appreciate it and how valuable in the stamp that you're making in the world. First of all, no one can ever pay you what you're worth, period. I just want to start with that, right? But I pray that you feel special and loved this week. And as a mom, as a provider, as an educator, which is everything to us. So this is what it's all about. So thank you for the work. I pray that you don't get weary. So thank you.
Yeah, I want to say thank you too for everything you do to make our next generation so great. So if you could wave a magic wand for this task force to do a couple of things you need to make things easier, both for in your profession or for or the kids, what would they be?
If I could wave a magic wand, I would wave the wand of equity, inclusion, diversity, because it is so necessary. We are not in this work to cater to a specific class or a specific type. We are in this work for children, children of every background, every socioeconomic status. And the magic wand would be being able to allow all children to have access to early education and early care.
Yes, I agree with that. If childcare could be more of a system like public school, I feel like it would be more accessible to everyone. And I think us as teachers, as childcare teachers, would be somewhat more respected and valued as school teachers are. So I guess that would be my magic wand, making it more of a system and not, just this center, that center, that center. Everybody's doing their own thing, making it more inclusive.
We have a bit of that. I worked in the Mort 4 programs and then transitioned into North Carolina public pre-K for many years. I also see the value of private facilities, but to agree with everyone's point that's spoken, I wish there was less like competitiveness inside of corporate chain facilities, even though I've worked in that sort of setting in the past. And I'm very grateful as well to work for a nonprofit. The environment's just so much healthier, in my opinion, for children in general, for their outcomes.
I agree with everyone.
I think you all said you'd been in the field at least 20 years, back through. What have been the changes you've seen in the system, good and bad, over the 20 years? How is it different than starting?
Circling back to a point I made earlier, for me, a change that's significant is the inclusion of children before diagnosis with special ed needs. If they need speech pathology, occupational, physical therapy, if a child is on the autism spectrum. I'm working in an environment now, but also in my NC pre-K years in Harnett and Johnson County before I worked in Wake County. Over the 25 years I've been in early childhood, I've seen inclusion increase. It's not without obstacles, but that's what I've noticed the most.
I would agree. I agree with Joy. I have seen inclusion increase as well, and the addition of programs as of late, the 3-school program. I've also seen a change in education requirements, which have affected the field in a very positive way. And a change in teachers having access to be able to acquire that education has also been a positive change that I've noticed over the years.
I have noticed a change in administration since I've been in childcare. A huge change. Also, as far as teachers, some teachers come in thinking this is what they want to do, but they really don't have a clue to what they're doing. And they think it's just a game sometimes. And I think I'm just so old school and so set in my ways as far as how things used to be. That's how I wanted to continue. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not. I don't like change, but I know when I need to make change, it'll be for the kids because I'm there to do what's best for them. But when we get new directors, at this center, we've been open 23 years, we've had 7. Everybody want to change things the way they want them, and this is what I want and how I want it. What about kids? That's what we're here for.
I want to thank all of you. Let's give them a big hand. That session. At this time, I'm happy to introduce Morgan Ford, who leads the Building Bright Futures program within the North Carolina Business Community of Education. Building Bright Futures is just one example of apprenticeship programming in the early care and education space. Morgan's here to share how the Building Bright Futures program connects childcare businesses with talent and aspiring early childhood educators with careers through apprenticeships. Welcome, Morgan.
Thank you for inviting me here today. I'm just going to use my teacher. So my name is Morgan Ford. I am the program director for Building Bright Futures. We are an initiative that supports early childhood education apprenticeships in North Carolina. I am part of the North Carolina Business Committee for Education, and we are a very unique organization. We are a nonprofit that operates out of the office of the governor. Governor Hunt founded us back in the early 80s, and we work to connect our North Carolina businesses with the educators and the students in our state so that we can get those students involved in work-based learning. And those are very important because that gives our students hands-on, real-life opportunities to see what careers look like on site, not just learning about them. We have two initiatives, Building Bright Futures and Career Launch, to support early childhood educators. You can see we provide technical assistance, we provide additional enrichment opportunities, and we also have financial support for those participating. I wanted to start really quickly. I know there are a lot of words up on the screen, but I wanted to make sure that everyone understands what apprenticeship is. It's not job shadowing, it's not internship. It is a rigorous program that is overseen by the U.S. Department of Labor and also here in North Carolina, Apprenticeship NC, our state apprenticeship agency. All apprenticeships include these three components. One, supplemental education. So that means that the apprentice is working toward a credential or a degree while at the same time working and getting paid. So that second component, on the job learning. So they are going to school and they are also working under the guidance of a mentor. And not only are they working with a mentor, but they are working toward the mastery of a list of competencies. And they have to prove that they can demonstrate those competencies before the end of the apprenticeship. So it is a really more than just working, more than just going to school. I think as one of our educators said, she sometimes has people come in, they don't maybe know what they're doing, they don't really know what they're getting into. And this is where you can have someone new to the field, someone who's experienced, come in and really get that one-on-one guidance while they are working and learning. The third important component is that the apprenticeship must include a progressive wage scale. So that apprentice knows that when they start at a minimum, there's going to be a particular wage. At the end, when they complete the apprenticeship, they know they're going to be guaranteed at least another particular minimum wage, and they will have at least one raise in between. And that goes to showing, the professionalism, the extra work that these people are going through to earn these potentials and these degrees while doing this on the job learning. Again, apprentices just have to be at least 16 years old, be able to work in the US. Again, they can be at any level of education or experience. Apprenticeship works for people new to the field and people who've had a lot of experience or maybe had some education already. And as I mentioned, they are paid employees at a child care center. They can be incumbent workers or they can be new hires. The apprenticeship, we have an employer here who participates in pre-apprenticeship. Where are you, Sandy, over there? You heard from him during the first meeting. This is for people who want to prepare for apprenticeship, or maybe they just want to dip their toe into the field. It's primarily for high schoolers. It can be for adults as well. And it's an opportunity to get exposure to the field. Also a great way for employers to recruit and train people starting as early as 16 years old. Another fantastic thing we have here in North Carolina. So if you're a high school student and you participate in a pre-apprenticeship, you complete that pre-apprenticeship and sign on to an apprenticeship within 120 days of your graduation. Your tuition up to an associate degree at our North Carolina community colleges is paid. So that is just one of the fantastic opportunities that our young people can use to get involved in the field. Okay, so I mentioned I run a program called Building Bright Futures. Building Bright Futures started in January 2023. Early childhood education apprenticeship had been around for a little bit, but as you might expect, a lot of people see the word apprenticeship, they think the trades. Well, just about any occupation is apprenticeable. So there was a lot of work happening behind the scenes, and DCDE decided, you know what, it's the pandemic. We're really hitting that cliff, that crisis. We have got to move fast to get more people into the workforce. So they asked us to step up, create a program to develop and scale these apprenticeships in North Carolina. Our goals were first to create this talent pipeline. When you have this apprenticeship program at an employer, it's there for as long as you want. You can have 1 apprentice, you can have 10 apprentices, you can have 50 apprentices. It's whatever suits your needs. But it's always there. It provides a very supportive career track for people coming in to your program. And therefore, we're increasing that workforce and we're supporting our growing workforce. As I said, apprenticeship is rigorous. It really recognizes our early childhood educators as professionals, and it gives them more opportunities for professional enrichment. Our program also really wanted to break down barriers to entering the field. We talk a lot about cost and wages. Well, the return on investment doesn't always make sense when you're going to school with the ultimate goal of maybe, starting out at a somewhat low wage. So we really wanted to make sure that we could eliminate as many costs as possible, provide support financially, but also really take a look at what are some of the other barriers that people are facing when thinking about going into the field. And then, of course, we want people to share their experiences with us. We are putting together a playbook based on our pilot experience about what people have learned, and so that we can have that to share with other states. And ultimately, we know that more childhood educators who are in the field are really going to provide more opportunities for our children. Okay, so during the pilot, we were able to create a system of support. So Building Bright Futures doesn't host its own program. Programs are hosted by employers or sponsors who are have employers working with their group program. The first thing we did is we went out and we just hit the ground running, the virtual meeting links, and we talked to as many people as we could about apprenticeship and what it could do. And we had financial support for our participants. That was a huge thing to incentivize people to try something new. As you can imagine, our child care centers are working on razor thin margins. The last thing they want to do is jump into a new program, have another thing that they have to manage. So we wanted to be able to provide them extra support and incentives to give it a try and be trailblazers in this program. So we provided a 50% wage match for all the hours that an apprentice worked. And to give you an idea, if you think about it, you're working toward an associate degree, for example, that's a minimum of 2 years you're going to be working on that. So these apprentices are typically working at least 30 or 40 hours a week while they're going to school. We also wanted to recognize those mentors. I would have to say some of the primary feedback we got from our pilot is that our mentors were the ones who kept our educators going. Having that person within their organization who was there to cheer them on, to remind them, why they were there. We heard about people's whys. Our educators are there because it's not just a job. We gave them stipends. We also had an online community of practice that early years hosts for us. We also had funds to help out with all those things that your typical scholarships perhaps or other grants that you get might not cover. We helped with transportation. Our educators have their own children, as we know, and sometimes there are childcare costs that aren't covered by other things. So we could cover that for them. Materials and supplies related to going to school, related to being a success at your job. We also help the employers with other types of programmatic costs, onboarding for new apprentices, whether that's testing or uniforms, whatever it might be, technology. A lot of them wanted to set up computer labs at their schools so their Educators could check in on school, attend webinars or online classes right there from the centers. And then of course, technical assistance. We are talking to people all across the state about what they're doing. So we wanted to make sure that we're connecting everyone, making sure that they're learning from each other, and just helping them with how to develop career pathways. Where are your educators going with these degrees? They're not just earning these degrees, but where are they going to take that learning? And then last but not least, we've been working with early years, and we have developed 2 statewide models as a result of what we've learned from this program. That is going to make it a lot easier for small centers to participate. They don't have to come up with their own things. They can participate in a very well-vetted, well-designed program that already exists. Where are we now? When we started out, there were maybe a dozen early childhood apprentices in the state. And now we currently have 378 educators pursuing those credentials and degrees. And we have an additional 57 that have already completed. We have 11 active pre-apprentices and 61 who've completed. And we have 66 of our 100 counties that are served by apprenticeship right now across 275 different childcare locations. You can see some examples of the pathways that people are looking toward. I want to mention that we're also working with the Autism Society of North Carolina. We have created a pathway for adults on the autism spectrum who would like to be in a classroom. And we have just piloted that with one of our first adults. It's going really well. To give you a quick overview of what our employers look like, they are in both urban and rural communities, and they are typically our small to medium-sized employers. Childcare homes, we have church-based communities, Head Start, NC Pre-K, it really runs the gamut. They all tend to be 3, 4, or 5 facilities. Again, our apprentices are new hires or incumbent workers. They range anywhere from 17 to 69, but our primary age group is people in the 20s. All right, so just to sum up, the benefits of apprenticeship in using that to build our workforce. Of course, we are going to get very highly skilled and qualified workforce out of this. Secondly, they're going to be earning these credentials and degrees. And to add to that, when you complete a pre-apprenticeship or apprenticeship, you get a Department of Labor apprenticeship credential that is recognized across the state. That shows employers here in North Carolina, employers anywhere in the country that you just go to school, don't just have the experience, but you went through a rigorous program. And this is also a way to do long-term support for our employers. Again, you don't have to have an apprentice all the time because sometimes these centers are small. They don't need to necessarily be constantly hiring, but it's a great framework to recruit people into the field. They come in, they know they're going to get trained. They know they're going to get a mentor and that their employer is investing in them. Apprenticeship does result in higher retention rates and return on investment. It's a little too early to give you data about that for early childhood, but about 91% retention rate for apprenticeship in general. So that's a really good statistic. And then of course, this is a way to really get, to build those relationships with your community colleges, workforce boards, with others in the community. And our really small centers and our rural centers particularly have appreciated that this is a way to get more involved with what's going on in the state and outside of their community. And then of course I mentioned that we provide financial support and incentives, which is really helpful to these centers. You're going to hear more about Teach later, I know, a great scholarship that is available for our early childhood educators. And then of course programs like ours that are able to support them along the way. These 2 years have gone fantastic. We've had great feedback. We have a lot of momentum, and we actually, I didn't have a chance to get the final numbers, but we might have the most apprentices in early childhood education here in North Carolina than in any other state. I will get that finalized this week. I'm going to a national conference and I want to hear everyone's new numbers. And I think you saw from our educators here that our educators are passionate. They like what they're doing. They want to do well. They want to stay in the field. So the demand is there for people to participate. And we have found that it's been really successful. It's been now 2.5 years. People are still really working hard. They're still loving it, even without some of the level of financial assistance that we had. But it's just been a fantastic support system for people going into the field and people already in the field. I just want to mention that having these statewide programs that we developed has really turned a corner for the program. It's going to make a lot more people able to participate. But we do need more support for the system, the apprenticeship system. We did get a lot of high funding during the pandemic. And now our funding levels are lower and we aren't able to support as many apprentices. We don't have as much staff as we did before. So it's going to be really important to build up statewide staff and local staff to support these people.
I did, Morgan?
That's
Okay,
it.
good. All right. Thank you. Let's open it up for questions. Let's see.
That was really, really good. I'm very happy to hear that. I wondered how people learn about this all over the state.
I would say that our most successful outreach measures that we've used are working with our community colleges and our local partnerships. They have gathered their childcare centers together and we do presentations virtually or in person to teach them about it. We have this QR code takes you to our Building Bright Future site where we have a wealth of information about apprenticeships. But we are constantly going around presenting. We have talked to a lot of the different organizations across the states.
Morgan, and Professional Jay, just a second, and I apologize. I didn't know about your organization. And so I think that's behooves us to do a better job of doing it. And tell me, how is it funded? You mentioned federal. Is there federal state money?
So my initiative, Building Bright Futures, is currently funded through the Preschool Development Grant. And DCTE also funded us for the pilot, but it was through ARPA money, COVID money.
Okay, that's what it would be.
Yes, but NCBCE is a nonprofit.
You asked my question. So are there federal dollar? There's no, oh, yeah, ARPA money. So how long does that take? How long does that fund you till?
So the ARPA money's gone.
It's gone. Okay.
So that ended, that was our 2-year pilot, 2023 and 2024. And our follow-up funding is through the Preschool Development Grant.
How much money are we talking about?
So our pilot was funded, it was actually ARPA money and the Office of the Governor gave us some additional money and it totaled $4.2 million for 2 years. You can imagine that the 90% of that went to wages. And then right now we have, through the Preschool Development Grant, we have about $700,000 a year. So it's significant.
Morgan, how many local partnerships are funding it? I know there are some state.
So the local partnerships are not funding the apprenticeship programs. So PAT's approved program is free. It doesn't cost any money to have it. What we're doing is we are providing some money directly to the employers who participate in the apprenticeship programs.
I'm sorry, I meant to say the mentor stipends.
Oh, the mentor stipend?
Is that the opportunity for partnership between?
That could be, yes. So we still provide those. They're not as high as they used to be because our funding is lower. So programs sign up with us. I think almost every employer who's involved in one of these apprenticeships, except maybe one right now, is a part of Building Bright Futures. But as I said, with our new funding, we aren't able to fund all of them. We provide a lot of support, that technical assistance, online webinars and things like that. But we don't have the same level of funding for mentor stipends to support with the programmatic work and wraparounds and things like that.
Just as a show of hands, how many people knew about Building Bright Futures? Come on, smart.
So you mentioned the statewide expansion. So what's the cost appropriations for a statewide expansion for the apprenticeship program?
Well, I first want to say that you don't have, as I said, you don't need money to be an apprentice. Anyone can do an apprenticeship program and not be funded to participate. I think that, you know, the first thing that we need to do is staff it up. I mean, I think I had 5 or 6 staff and now it's just me. And then the second thing is I would really like to be able to help more than 220 of our apprentices. You can see right now we have significantly more than that. So we need to at least double that amount that we're getting just to support the apprentices.
Will you get us,
Pardon?
will you get us a full proposal?
Thank you.
Will you get us a proposal for that?
Yes, I will.
Would an appropriation chair ask that?
Morgan, did you say, or are we recruiting some of these potential future educators from the high schools? Did you say that, where are we finding them? Okay.
So I kind of glossed over it, but Career Launch is our new grant to support high schoolers because we think that's a really important target audience. So there is a statewide pre-apprenticeship program that is hosted by our Department of Public Instruction, where you take the Introduction to Early Childhood class, you do 120 work-based learning hours with a child care center. And that is the standard pre-apprenticeship that students can participate in. And our Career Launch program does help with some funding specifically for employers, mentors, and students participating in that. But the key is that we want our pre-apprentices to have that next step. We all focus on a pathway. So to participate in pre-apprenticeship, you need to make sure there's an apprenticeship in your area to go into. So that is one of the reasons we don't have as many pre-apprenticeships going as apprenticeships right now. Excuse me, our focus has been on establishing those apprentices.
Questions? Lori.
Hi, Morgan. This may be a bigger question for the legislators. Southwestern has been doing a combination of pre-apprentice and apprenticeship work now for about 3 years. And we started out with securing some grant funding to help the high schools fund a teacher for the CTE early childhood program. That grant funding is ending, and we're not sure, particularly one of our high schools is going to be able to continue to participate, even though students are there and want to do the pre-apprenticeship work. We're not sure that the schools themselves are going to have the money to devote to that. So we're trying to look at options and just trying to get the word out. We've also met with several other county schools in the last several months. There's more interest out there, but I think as they continue to struggle locally with their school budgets, that's where the roadblock seems to be right now. Because we're going after grant money. We've talked to Morgan. We know the incentives that she has. We know what we can bring to the table, but it's really kind of helping fund those CTE programs at the high schools that's going to be a critical piece.
That's right. It's not taught at all of our high schools, so the students have the option to take community college, but we're really working to try to get it.
All right, anyone else? All right, let's give Morgan a big hand. We're right on time. We're going to take a 10-minute break, be back on time, and we'll finish this thing up today.
Sure.
I'm just double checking. Thank you. I'll just do the history. Yeah. It's cool. Yeah, well.
I'm James.
That's
nice to see you in person. You look. The
That happens usually.
No, I'm not managed back. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, you're on deck for today.
Very special meeting.
I mean, kind of. I started at today. And I left.
So I've come back and done contract work. I've been doing various changes. So I've been with this division for a while, but it's been right there. Yeah, Jim, how are you? Yes, there is. Well, that's not still. Involved. It was It's probably on the shift, but it's great. When I first, after I had my first came back, being very fascinating. And so didn't break and then worked out until then. It kind of got us through the first like 6 or 7 months. It's exhausting. So I very vividly remember those days.
Yes. Yeah.
Like my oldest is 17. I did a junior in high school and then I have twins. I'm going to girl for 13. So I'm firmly in the teenage years. Yeah.
Excited.
For a bit. Well, I went through a stage of like, good. And then one of my friends had a yeah. And then we got, yeah. So we can say, look, you've been telling me. It's like on the free. Yes, good. Still part-time. About like, you can't, it's like, no, that's. At that time, I had out you. No, I never lived here. I do. It's really bad. It's so hard. It's so hard to walk. That's why I was telling man, you try to come to me on other things. Yeah. Person, he can talk to anyone about anything and ask for only please. It's good childcare experience. You probably need them. He likes to. Oh, yeah. I don't know if James to be here, but she's headed to DC for a leadership. Yeah. You know, I was wondering where she was because I saw she was. She's. No, they always say he's such an info.
He's good to have a doctor.
We're talking today.
That person.
Okay.
So we just very, very correct. That's what I'm like. No, it would be that way. Not the room is a lot. So it's only the second one.
Sorry, I didn't know where it may be.
Spread out.
You think, find out.
Hi, Jake. It's nice to meet you.
I'm just taking my.
Thanks for
guidance
for today.
for introduce you stuff.
I'm not.
You just gotta see.
Oh, with the like. I was not on, was there, I wasn't on the conference thing actually. Okay.
I think by Friday.
Yes, I saw that.
So I knew I'd be on today, so.
Yeah. It's fun to, yeah.
Raise Sia another. He said it was like, yes.
And we got some, not saying that's.
I know.
Nicole, it's gotta
Really
go down.
nice.
It's in. Because my signature.
But it's a nice venue.
I'm excited to hear you about the time.
Yeah.
And in general.
Yeah.
No.
It's like.
Like, I think.
Yeah. Want to know.
Not.
Did you grab out this list too? Just grab out. So she's.
We know you're proud, Senator. We wanted to.
We've got one minute, I'm gonna brag. You know, this just shows that even elected officials can be on time. Certainly, you know, there's the political time, which is always 10 to 15 minutes late. We need to break that habit. All of us need to respect your own stuff. You know, the great effort to be here. So thank you. Appreciate what everybody's doing. It always, there's always circumstances with. It is time to start. I'd like to turn things over to Michael Lees, Deputy Secretary for Opportunity and Wellbeing at the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services, to lead us through a panel of experts on training and retaining our early care and education workforce. Welcome, Michael.
Thank you so much, Senator. Can everybody hear me or
So you use the microphone. So for the people online and stuff that I need to hear.
Senator, thanks so much. And I'm really excited to be a part of this panel. And, the early care and education workforce is so critical to solving this problem. And I think we all know about a lot of the challenges. We know about low pay. We know about $14 an hour on average that folks are making. We know about all the other industries that are recruiting teachers. And we know about really just demanding, jobs. These jobs demand a lot from our teachers, and we really have to think about ways that we can support them. So I'm so excited to be joined by this great panel who are going to talk about some of the tools that we have that we can leverage to help this retention and recruitment challenge that we have. And a lot of these are already underway. And so we're going to talk about the good things that are happening. Some of them have been around for a while. Some are just emerging. So we're really excited about this. I'm going to introduce the panel. I'm really excited. Two of the panelists are my current colleagues and two are former colleagues. So it's really nice to reunite with some of these folks. So first we have Allison Kiesler, who's the Policy and Planning Program Manager in the Division of Child Development and Early Education at NCDHHS. We also have Dr. Christy Snuggs, who is President of the Early Years. And then we've got Kimberly Malady, who's Senior Early Childhood Policy Advisor, also at DCD at the NC Department of Health and Human Services. And finally, Valerie Wallace, who is the Executive Director from the Partnership for Children of Wayne County. So thanks all for being with us this afternoon. I'm going to start, Christy, with you. I want to learn a little bit more about the TEACH scholarships. And we were chatting a little bit before and doing the math. It's been around a little while. And so I'd love to hear a little bit more about the program, background and history, and all the great things you're doing.
Well, sure. Good afternoon. Thank you for having me today. I want to talk about the TEACH Scholarship, which is celebrating its 35th anniversary. So it has been here a long time. Back in 1998, early years, we were formerly Child Care Services Association. We did this thing called an early childhood workforce study. We wanted to find out the data around early childhood. What does our workforce really look like? And so in 1990, we published those first results. And we found that there were three issues. Probably not surprising to anyone in this room. One is that we had an undereducated workforce. We had a very undercompensated workforce, and we had a high turnover rate. Well, we just completed another one in 2023. That's what the three issues are. The same thing, but they're better than they were. But what this workforce study showed us is those three things. And we also, back in 1989, people still had children, okay? So parents, there was an outcry from parents, there was an outcry from early childhood educators, from the community that we needed to find viable solutions, very similar to the conversations we're having now. And so what they did is in 1990, Early Years, or formerly Child Care Services, created the TEACH Scholarship with a group of system partners. We actually had an institute of professionals that actually were a subsidiary of the Division of Child Development. They were actually staff. And we brought those folks together and we came up with this program. And it's been in existence for that long. It also sort of aligned with Governor Hunt's development of Smart Start. And during that time, we also, now, it got me confused now. I got to think what I was saying. But during that time, we created this scholarship program as a solution. And it addressed all three of those barriers that we found in that workforce study. It addressed the education of our staff. It addressed the compensation of our staff. And it also addressed turnover rates. What we found and what we know now is from those early beginnings that now, just this past year, we're now in 23 states with the TEACH program. Other states have modeled us and want this program. And we served there was over $65 million devoted to this nationwide, and it impacted over 600,000 children. Just in North Carolina last year, TEACH served about 1,800 participants and impacted over 55,000 children with better educated workforce. And what's so unique about it is it's actually legislatively mandated. It is a state law that TEACH is funded. And so we've been able to get those TEACH funds for many, many years, and it continues to work. And what we see is that the retention rate of those staff is is more than 90% in most cases for people that are on TEACH.
Christy, thanks so much. I'm going to hand it over to Allison next. Anything you want to add, Allison, in terms of the impact that this program's had across the state?
Yes, well, so I'll personally tell you that in the nineties, yikes. I was a Teach recipient. I was able to get my North Carolina early childhood credentials, was paid for by Teach as an early educator starting out in that time. But as Christy mentioned, we're coming up on the 35th year and Teach has funded over 37,000 scholarships. You mentioned the 23-24 year. I think it was close to 2,100 scholarships, 600 new early childhood professionals, and the reach is, of course, statewide, but in the 23-24 year, they did serve in 93 counties through 56 community colleges and 20 universities and private colleges. And 123 graduated with an associate's or bachelor's degree.
Great, thanks so much. And I'll kind of open this to both of you. Anything else you want to add about sort of the demand? Are you continuing to see folks seeking out this program?
So earlier in the panelists mentioned needing access to education. I think the wonderful thing about Teach is that it provides that access to a field of professionals that we are trying to gain through our apprenticeships and who want to stay and who also want to further their education. You can have a debt-free education through Teach just by being employed for 30 hours or more full-time in childcare. And they have a variety of ways to meet the needs of those educators. It doesn't have to be a pathway just to associates. We have through QRS modernization, we have lots of different ways that you can earn your education and receive that star level for education. So there'll be certificates and they fund the CDA. There's just a way for everyone to get those needs met through Teach.
Yeah, I was just going to add that we have over 20 scholarships. A lot of people believe that they know about Teach and they know about that one associate degree scholarship. We fund the first course, the EDU 119, which is the credential course. And at the end of that course, when you complete it, you get a bonus. So there's also stipends built in that help with the workforce compensation. And then Teach also does other things, very similar to what Morgan talked about with the apprenticeship. It's wraparound supports. So it covers not only tuition and books, but travel. We pay connectivity for internet for people that might need that. There's release time, but there's always that component of compensation. How do we add? When you finish a contract, which you agree to, you get a bonus or a raise. When you finish a degree, you get another bonus or a raise. So it is designed to meet the needs of our providers. And I gave you a handout that we worked very recently with our community college system to create multiple ways. One of the teachers said that the accessibility of education is so much better. This is some of those unique, innovative solutions that we've worked with to get people in school and to find ways to help them pay for it.
That's great. Thank you both. That's incredibly helpful. And Christy, I'm going to stick with you for another program that Early Years administers. Tell us about Wages.
So Wages is a salary supplement program. It is 31 years old because what we did is we started Teach in 1990. We started it in Orange and Durham counties, and then it quickly expanded statewide in 3 years. And then as a companion, we started Wages because we knew that we still needed to address those compensation issues of the early childhood workforce. And so Wages is a evidence-based, evidence-informed salary supplement program. It's been around for a long time. What it does is it rewards people for going back to school and getting educated. We start at the very basics of the CDA and we move on up. As you get more education, you get more money. And it is implemented in such a way that people get 2 stipends a year every 6 months. And what's so great about it, and Teach as well as Wages, is there's a retention component. So every contract that you sign with a Teach scholarship, you have to remain in that facility and working in the early childhood field. With Wages, you have to remain in the same facility for at least an additional 6 months to get that Wages supplement. It really helps our workforce. It, on average, right now, it totals about $2,600 a year. But I have stories upon stories of providers that will tell you it kept their lights on. It helped pay for food for their children. Those are the stories that we hear time and time again. And it is a partnership through the Smart Start partnerships across the state. It is funded through with Smart Start dollars. So every bit of the salary supplement money goes into the hand of providers. And last year it was almost $10 million, a little under $10 million. We spend that down to the exact penny. If you do not know my VP of Compensation Initiatives, Allison Miller, she spends it down to the penny. There's nothing left. And she makes sure that money gets into the hand of those providers. And it's also a partnership with the Division of Child Development, Michael, and we're so pleased that the department and the division helps us with that. They help cover the administration of this. Our staff is not very big. It's 5 people or less, and we administer over almost $10 million a year down to the penny, and it's helping providers.
Christy, thanks so much. And thank you for the work you're doing to make sure that that money gets out the door and makes a difference. Anything else you want to add about sort of any demand that you're seeing? What do things look like now for opportunities of expansion?
That's a great question. I have to just brag on the outcomes of this program. For 31 years, we measure retention, we measure education, we measure compensation. And what we see is that people that participate in teaching wages make about $1 to $3 more per hour than those who don't. We also know that with the wages salary supplement program, we have a retention rate this past year, a turnover rate this past year of about 15%. It never got higher than 15% throughout the pandemic. The average, our workforce study showed that it's about a 40% turnover rate in early childhood, but those that are on the wages program, 15% this past year. In most years, it averages between 7 and 9%. And that's over 31 years of repeated keeping our staff employed. Our participation surveys always tell us how much people want this program. They talk about that 96% say it keeps them in the early childhood field, that they wouldn't stay. Our workforce study shows that 23% of the teaching staff are ready to leave, but those on teaching wages stay. They stay. We also found through our workforce study that our infant and toddler teachers, those that work with our youngest children, they make even less. They typically make about $1 less than our early childhood, those that work with 3 to 5-year-olds. And so about 6 years ago, the division in their infinite wisdom worked with us to create an awards program, an awards plus that works specifically with infant toddler teachers. And so another $4 million is going into that it's another salary supplement program, but it's specifically for infant and toddler teachers. Again, in the 6 years, our retention rate is over 85%. We've never seen less than 15. And so we know that both of these work. We also have a waiting list for infant and toddler teachers. We have a waiting list for wages. We've got people that give us money at different times of the year. But the problem is with wages is we're only in 67 counties because some of our smaller partnerships just cannot devote that amount of money to their workforce. So we really, really want to see a statewide program so that every teacher, every early childhood teacher, no matter what county they're serving in North Carolina, can have the same benefits of a salary supplement program.
Christy, thanks so much. That's a lot of great information. Really appreciate that. I'm going to head on down line and ask Kimberly to jump in here. And if you could share a bit, Kimberly, for the group around preschool development grants and how do they fit into this overall landscape of initiatives that train and support the early childhood landscape?
Sure. You've heard a little bit about preschool development grant. We call it PDG for sure. But it is a discretionary grant that is federally funded through the U.S. Departments of Education and Health and Human Services. It focuses on building, expanding, and enhancing early childhood education systems in states across the nation. We were the recipient of planning grants for a few years that helped do a needs assessment and strategic plan for the state for birth through 5 years old. We have recently been awarded a renewal grant to implement some of those activities, and that's for a 3-year period. It's $27 million, so that's $9 million per year. And it really works to support the workforce, any sort of initiatives like that. You heard a little bit about Building Bright Futures, which is really exciting work. There are other strategies we're working on, building on family community engagement, making sure that there's a good transition from our early childhood system into the K-12 system. And so focus on school readiness there, just as a little overview.
Great. Thank you, Kimberly. Really appreciate that. Valerie, I'd love to turn it over to you. And this is a newer initiative compared to some of the others that we've spoken about. Would love to hear about childcare academies.
Sure. Okay, so it is a newer initiative, but I want to give credit to the folks in the western part of the state, my colleagues and partnerships in the western part of the state, because they're the ones who came up with this creative idea. And we stole the idea and brought it east down into Wayne County. And so what our child care academies are doing is that we are trying to help with teacher vacancies and building the workforce. And the way that we are doing this is that we are targeting participants that have never worked in child care. So it's twofold. It's to help the providers fill vacancies among their staff, but it's also to try to get folks in the early childhood profession. And we're targeting folks that may be in the early childhood classes. We're also targeting, we're a military community, so we're targeting military spouses. And so what we do with these academies, we run an academy from anywhere from 2 to 3 weeks, about 6 hours a day. And we're providing these participants with trainings that they would have to have if they worked in childcare. So we're providing CPR, first aid, playground safety, foundations, the health and safety trainings. We're doing professionalism, resume building. We partnered with our community college that has a childcare facility. So we're giving them guided tours. They're actually getting to go and work in childcare prior to actually working in childcare. And we're talking about brain development, challenging behaviors. So we're giving them all of this coursework. When they leave our academies, they have a portfolio. They get the DCDEE credits for participating in our academy. We did this about a year ago on a shoestring budget. We used our private funds to initiate these academies. Well, then we got creative and found a private grant, and we partnered with Johnston County Partnership for Children, wrote the grant, wrote it as a workforce issue. And we were awarded $50,000, and we split that with Johnston County. So they're actually running academies. Wayne County's running academies. We still have 2 more academies between their county and ours to collect the data. But what we've seen is that it's allowed us to provide additional support for folks that we hope will go into the workforce. We're able to provide them with a $250 stipend after they complete the training. They get their fingerprints and background checks that we pay for that. We've been able to put them into college courses, EDU 119. And if they've already had EDU 119, then any other course that's associated with the early childhood field, we paid for that coursework. We provided textbooks for them. We've been able to provide meals because it's a long day. Sometimes our courses have run longer than 6 hours, and instead of sending them out and making them buy their own lunch, we'll provide that for them as well. They leave with a portfolio. They know where vacancies are in our community. Directors have come in and done career fairs with them, done on-site interviewing, and been able, some of these folks have gone the day after the academy and been employed. What we've seen between the 2 counties is that we have graduated 33 participants. That is a 36% have gone to work in childcare, and 18% have gone on to higher education. Now, we think that's a low number, but if you're in early childhood, you know, that's a huge step. And the providers are, very thankful that they don't have to put out of their own pocket money to pay for these trainings, and that they have staff that come in already certified.
Great, Valerie. Thanks so much for sharing. Sounds like it's got a lot of momentum. Can you tell me about any efforts to keep it rolling and any ideas on expansion?
So it is started rolling. A lot of other counties are doing it. I know Lee County is taking the shift and doing a directors academy, which is really interesting. They're also doing this, but they're also doing an academy for directors as well. One of the great things that has come out of the academies is that we have met with the Representative Arp's office. He initiated House Bill 389. Mary was involved in that conversation. Amy Cubbage with NCPC was involved in those conversations as well. And so there is a House bill to promote these academies. It will be a partnership between the community college system and through NCPC for these academies to run in hopefully 12 counties. Wayne County and Johnston County were named in the House bill. So if it makes it through all the things that it has to make it through, we hope that we'll have 12 partnerships implementing academies, which will roll out a number of providers that will help us with this workforce issue.
Great, thanks so much. And I'm just curious. So I'm just curious about kind of the problem solving and getting something up and running like this, how you've been working with your colleagues to kind of build this over the past year or two.
It takes a lot of collaboration. It's easy to do, and you have to make it fit your community. So the folks in the western part of the state laid the foundation. We just took what they did and tailored it for Wayne County. We knew what our county was like. We knew what our providers needed. We partnered with our community college. Mary's been a great support to us. Amy in NCPC has been a great support. We are working with NCPC of trying to make this an evidence-based, evidence-informed program. So we're collecting data that we can share with them so that hopefully in the next year that we'll be able to use some Smart Start dollars and be able to fund this. Like I said, it doesn't take a lot of money, but it does take a lot of money. And so we just took the initiative to look for other avenues of funding. And that's why we went after a private grant. But we worked alongside our Chamber of Commerce as well. They were very supportive in this. And so our local businesses have helped advertise for us. So it's just a lot of planning and planning of the courses. If it becomes an initiative and it gets state funding, Mary has designed a curriculum that we'll be able to use, but it will have some flexibility to allow communities to implement some additional things. But everybody will be having the same training topics and so we know our participants are all on the same page.
Great, thank you so much. I just want to pause real quick. Anything else that any of the panelists want to add, things that forgot to say or had popped into your mind since you shared with us? Good. Well, in that case, we'd love to open it up for any questions from the task force members.
Quickly, what is the cost of that program?
It just depends. It depends on what you implement. If you want to do meals, there's a cost associated with that. We did figure up for training, we were giving participants about $400 of free training. And that's because some of our training courses, CPR and first aid costs $75 in our county. That's no cost to them. The background checks have a fee associated with it. Fingerprints have a fee associated with it. So it just depends on what you want to put into your academy. We, with our private funding, we were able to pay trainers to come in and do some of the training for us. We added the $250 stipend. And so that totals up. But when we first initiated it, we didn't have a stipend. We didn't pay for background checks or anything like that. So we figured it was about $1,100 per participant to do it.
And so just to follow up, the bill that's in the House right now, what is the funding attached? Is there a funding number attached to that?
I don't think there's any funding at this point. When it first came out, there was funding associated, but they got creative and took that out to hopefully get it through the different phases that they needed to get it to. But I know one of the things that we did talk about was a stipend, which would be, I think it was $150 stipend. And if they stayed in childcare, it would be a $500 stipend. They had to remain 1 year at that facility. And then there was funding associated with that would go to NCPC and I think the community college to pay for the courses, because I think it's going to run through continuing ed. That would translate into EDU 3119, which would be 64 hours of training.
Thank you all very much.
Representative Crawford.
Very related question. So in terms of how it's been paid for up until now, because I know there have been several, I know in Catawba, I think the local chamber there paid for the program for the first one, and you talked about getting a grant. But I know there've been several, and I'm curious as to how partnerships have been able to fund them up until now, what the different sources have been.
Our first year, we just used private money that we fundraised. That was non-restricted. Like I said, we did a private grant. I know Catawba did use chamber money, I believe. And I think the community college in Stanley County was the one who initiated their academy.
They used college, they wrote for a grant from their community college foundation.
I don't have a question, but I have a shout out to Teach. We used to teach a lot at our schools, and it's like a recruitment tool as well. And I did notice that the more people that are involved with Teach, there's fewer retention with those folks. So that's a wonderful program. So I wanted to say thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you. We appreciate those supports.
And I know as part of the academies, we always speak about teach and wages and awards because our partnership does fund wages. So we do try to put that as a part of their portfolio that they leave with.
I'm sure everybody saw the handouts that were later, spent a lot more information on it. What else? Other questions?
Christy, can you talk about the variations in Teach, or like why one county would be really different, could be very different than another county?
In Teach
or wages?
In wages, yes. So the way it works right now is, like I said, it's a partnership with the local Smart Start partnerships. And each partnership has their own local board of directors that makes determinations based on the funding allocations that they receive. And so there are so many components to it right now. In each county, they can choose which tier. There's 3 different tiers, and it based on how much money the individual childcare provider makes. So, for example, if they make, I think the middle tier right now is $19. So if they make over $19, then those providers would not be eligible. In other counties, it goes up to $23. And then there's also the consideration that right now, as an individual county program, they can choose who they want to be on wages. So if they do not want to fund administrators, they can make the decision not to fund administrators. They can only fund the teachers, which are typically the lower paid individuals, or they can choose to fund all people that work in a licensed facility. And it really is dependent upon what their local partnership has the money to fund, because it is one of the many activities that they choose. Workforce is very important, and that's why it's in 67 counties right now. And we have another one, I think, that's coming on board in 68. But we still, you know, some of those smaller partnerships, and Amy can speak a lot, much more detail about this, is that administratively and the funding they receive is very limited. And so while they would love to help their child care providers, they just can't. I mean, it would be like maybe they would get what? $50 extra. I mean, $50 extra is $50 extra, but then they have no money to do anything else. So it's really dependent on the funding they receive, who they choose to fund, and the level at which they want to fund it. Yeah.
Any other questions? Lunch, I'm having fun. All right. Thank you all so much. Let's give them a big.
Perhaps.
you have any other questions, and we are actually ahead of schedule, so, want to. Got one last exercise today. I'd like to welcome Lonnie Rivers back to help us develop reflections and hopefully some more recommendations.
All right, we're down to the last leg of the day. Wonderful presentation by Morgan, just for us to start to lean in on what we need to do to address some of the early care and education workforce issues and take deep dive into that. And of course, the final presentation from Christy with early years, my division support staff, our division staff that's here, so grateful. I just wanted to really give a big round of applause for our division staff. I can't say enough. I know they're here by request, but they always have their ears open to what it is that we need, what people are saying, what's working in other states, and willing to do whatever they need to do to make sure that North Carolina stays abreast of everything. And of course, Christy's doing the same work at early years. And so this is just absolutely amazing. So what we want to do now, and I also want to just hear that I am a recipient of the Teach Scholarship Program. I cannot say enough. I was able to get my master's with it. And really it's what opened the door for me to be here with you today. Because in addition to that, in case you didn't know, we have some of the most powerful people in early childhood in our higher ed system in North Carolina. So I had the opportunity to be exposed to Miss Sue Russell, who many of you know, who have started Teach many years ago just through this scholarship program. And some of the amazing professors we have. I also want to just say really quickly, we have such an amazing community college system. They are always leaning in, ready to pivot to figure out what our needs are. So thank you for that. Next, what we want to do is I want you to please take into consideration everything that you've heard. It's our workers, it's our workforce. What do we do? How do we recruit them? What resources do we have that we can tap in? I heard Ms. Valerie say that she stole the idea that she heard something from the Western County. And then she took that knowledge and said, we just need to tailor it for our county, but we can do that too. And working together, that's what it's all about. So if we could just put our thinking caps on, which is what I tell my preschoolers, put your thinking, kiss your brain for a minute, and just think about what you've heard, how you think some of those ideas can be initiated in other counties, who's here at this table, and who is it that we can talk to in our communities to help us really synergize and be solution-centered members of the community, so we can figure out what else we can do to recruit, retain our workforce. So if we could take the next, let's say 15 minutes or so we can have a little bit more time for questions, and I'll help keep us up to par on questions in that time together. Make sure you use your stickies, please. We need to capture everything as an opportunity to expand upon it in our work groups later. And division staff members, if you, and Christy, and those of you, if you can please just express yourself and walk around and be a part of the conversations. Same groups 1, 2, 3, and 4, and I'll let you know when our time is up in 15 minutes. Thank you so much for staying awake and being in tune. So let's finish strong.
Yeah, she's back there. Take it.
We need sticky notes again.
It's great partnership. I know. She talked about. So I really do look back. It's like a lot after some not that
Get all the complete.
And even us, and even one of our partners, yeah, and if that works for the regions. We might agree to have it. Those great.
So do you have?
I think that's sure. Whatever it is, supplements. There.
Necessary. Great question. Robert Nine. Asked to be right together 23 years. Actual cost to they product and track. Like I was looking at this, we have these connections across the county, right? So because we have something. People.
Hey, are you?
No,
Nice to meet you.
actually, where
Pretty good.
where they get.
Well, I was-
Right? Or for more than you're gonna.
Yeah, on your free flow, right? Yeah. I've heard you from podcasts. Yeah. How help?
And they're, right, and they're, right, also, right.
Conversation. Same conversation. Did she call? You put your brain on something?
Okay. That's why I questions. So right now, that's what pieces you have. And should they just. That's like research. It makes sense.
So I'm saying, they see more than just, I know we're gonna. That was. So we're going to have.
Like the one.
Oh, okay.
Way to go.
Not just that.
Well,
She's 178 assistant, so I respect the funds.
thinking about how. Make it. I try to say.
Not this.
I think that would be very. I think it's at least more years of.
Okay, yeah.
I think for childhood, that they don't.
Quality.
Even the child, amen. All the early childhood students. Like.
That is. And we pay probably.
Which is the incentive is actually worse than last year.
Right. I mean, he gets benefits. Benefits. So, yeah, that's a tough thing to find. And profit. How long you been?
Daughter had.
Of it all. So you're almost 8. No, I'm almost. Oh,
We talked about, yes.
I got it. What did it have? And so you're down in Mecklenburg. Okay.
They're gone, yeah. Oh, my God.
We're off.
We're kind of a hodgepodge.
Yeah.
Yeah, and, oh, sorry. But it's backed it up. That's why I think it's get better. And
Yeah, you're right.
I'm saying.
So, them fairly entry level.
Oh, it works.
But.
We have things that are
Things that don't.
So my distribution stuff is probably hard. That's how we got was serious.
My first stint, I just fixed, I get out, so I grew up in parts of the Charlotte for a couple years. And then I was just a little bit more. You can tell, you can, I asked for house meeting, Yankee buck. Pretty good, I came down. What, I live in Maine. So always wanted to go better in Carolina. Yes, we came back about a month ago, lived in Cary.
Well, that's, yeah.
Enjoy it. Don't work. Great team. Dude.
And you stop. Having worked.
Fewer than zero.
That's like for that, and she was talking to me about.
You waste too much. Oh, anyway, So, yeah, it's like, yeah.
And so we
So it it's a real struggle. And another
But that's why Susan couldn't make it. She's great. I haven't seen her in a little while. Superstar. Oh, that's work starts. Well, remember him. Well, the NCPC.
And I always say, you're the.
You need to go to the department. So we have this. Some in species, some elsewhere.
Ready to go.
Now I moved on, get out, so it is just. And actually,
Talk about the benefits of that. Oh my God, when I get my 6 wages bonus, that's when I pay my career.
you know, we bags.
It's true. The balance.
When I was in it. I don't know.
Early childhood.
Christy, we were talking about rough hours. That was. That's what we don't have to get back. Somewhere. Visions.
Yeah. One of the ladies.
Yeah, it's like that, so I think it's just. We don't have a student, but our research director had already discussed that. And then some providers that are. They're some of those kinds of. That is not something.
Yeah.
I'll ask them to see that. That is something.
Classes.
So you just said that. It does make something seem. Yeah. Yeah. That's something, sure. It was. It's been really nice. Yeah. Oh, sorry, I'm gonna go and when I give it to you, or other property, I can send it out.
Academies.
Right. What? A lot of wraparound engineers that go to
That's
good. Yeah, that's nice. You can have it.
That's just the training program. It's a training thing.
Math that, I can go to math with these jump in, like look at, applications around. Wait. The better off you're not, the better off not. You mentioned that and how we don't know if a construction worker can make the
It works to try and find.
Oh, yeah, market rates, it does. Yeah, so like.
So.
I was reimbursed $13,800.
Just say, we're like, define it, you would pay them.
Yeah.
Everything else is like.
It was the house just turned.
That's the $10,000.
There was a proposition.
Once they work it out around the numbers and they.
To be cut. Yeah. Give me that, I'm paying it off, I'm gonna be hired, get the.
Just, but yeah, we need to stay that, but I mean, stay.
Give everybody.
I got it.
I don't know, but it's sad. I'm so. My daughter.
She was scared to death. She didn't.
Right, and then one book, she mentioned, she's scared. So we can have a few minutes for questions people.
Do it, so she can.
Yeah, listening to some of the conversation and hear these wonderful minds from all sectors coming together to talk about if we work together. What's possible in our communities in North Carolina. I was encouraged, I listened to a little bit of Senator Heiss and some, I'm not gonna put it about, but I was in that about what you were saying, and also hear people from their experiences from years ago. Just understanding what it's like to be a parent, and even if you've never been a parent, one thing we all have in common is that we've all been a child. So imagine what we would need, or what we want, or what we needed and didn't have, and hopefully we bring that to the table as well. So I want to hear from, if we can get 2 or 3 people who would like to kind of share and put the sticky notes out. One thing I might just ask you to do, since I have 5 seconds to say this, keep in mind as we're talking about the cost of childcare, that our needs are expanding too. So of course, we're behind. we keep up with identifying and meeting the needs where we were, but now we're trying to catch up. Please keep in mind the vastly growing need for mental health supports in early childhood. I can't say that enough. I would also put that in there as a factor for why teachers are leaving the industry at our level and in the older ages as well. So as we think about funds that are coming in, we're not talking about just lead teacher and assistant teacher, but I can promise you that we need to identify ways to have additional support staff. Because what we've seen, and I think one of the teachers said it is true, that the mental health supports for these young children, I tell people it doesn't start at 18. I see that social and emotional need and imbalance at 1 and 2 and 3 years old. And we're concerned about what we can do. So let's just keep that in mind. We're talking about budget and we're talking about how to allocate our dollars. So like with some questions they like to pose, please, or share, or great ideas that we can put on the board that we can further develop and expand on later. Which group wants to go first?
I actually think our business is more than had to with more questions. I feel like last time we had one question. Trying to absorb all of this and kind of coalesce around the idea.
I think I am on. So, I think that where we coalesced on it was a lot of what we heard today are various ways in which we are trying to get more money in a system in a way that starts to look like Band-Aid. Because you're trying to move that underlying foundation of how do you fund a system in which the true cost of it can't be borne by those. And so I think that where we were coming down on what does a more universal system look like and how does that fit into all the existing good that is already out there in terms of public and private partnerships, different options for parents. And so I think that any recommendation that we had, we kind of said, well, be pretty radical, it'd be pretty big. And that's where our thoughts and recommendations came.
Thank you, parents. Anyone else wants to share a great idea they had?
I don't know if I want to make this top billing as a great idea, but couple, just building off of the comments that we just made, Elizabeth was, I think Senator Bergen said sometimes he gets told like all of this is like a quilt. And I think we understand that, but it does feel like there's some holes in the quilt. And so it would be nice to understand what the full system possibility could look like. And so we could start identifying gaps. Like you mentioned, what are the public-private partnerships? What are the wages and supplemental programs already in place? What are the new ideas about new programs and training? Might be helpful to see that so that we can understand where there are gaps. But also from our group too, I would just share that one of our other observations was that there is an opportunity to really make the wages program operate like a statewide program. We know it's offered statewide, but it doesn't look to be operated or implemented at a standard that is that we know would really help raise the bar. So we would love to see that as a solution, a policy solution that we could put forward.
Starts right here. Thank you for sharing that. We have time for one last, if there's any burning comment you'd like to make. If not, please make sure it's on your sticky once again. Will you open your mic? It's okay, Teresa.
I'll go, and it kind of goes to your comment, which I thought was perfect that you said it. That's not me. Okay, I'll spit it out. One thing that we were talking about is the two different programs that we really were like excited about was the academies and getting that person ready, but it only gets them ready for getting in the door. So I don't want to be Debbie Downer, but to remind people of that, but it gets them ready to start. But how beautiful it would be to bridge academies with bridging the apprenticeship to really get that person, I've got a portfolio, this is where I am as a professional, but then saying, now that you're in, we're going to wrap the circle of supports around you and really guide you into the profession of early childcare. It's a profession, and showing them that this is a true field of practice. So that would be a beautiful thing to actually see that, and then to see where that teacher can then grow.
Love that. Thank you. Close on to us. So thank you so much. If you have any other, Senator Heiss want to say something?
That appears to be. Senator Bergen asked me if I'd share this, and I just, to the point, and I've said it to several subgroups I've talked to. I had a conversation with one of my community college trustees in the district about their early childhood program. And his comment he made was, why would the college continue to support an early childhood program when it takes someone from poverty level and at the end of the program, they are still in poverty level? If I take someone in nursing, I will take someone from poverty level to upper middle class. If I take someone in a construction program, I will move them to a middle class kind of program. But if I take someone through an early education program, they come out still competitive with fast food wages. And I just want to put, the point is that if you want to recruit someone to a field, you may have to start with the field has to be proper. That's with coming in. It's one of the things about we trying to look into what does it cost to run a center? What are those kind of things? If there's some solutions, but if I would say with this generation and others, you want to go out and have conversations with people about going into a field, you're going to need a little more than the fulfilling nature and the benefit to society. Like you can provide for your family has to be part of that. And post-COVID and others, it's not there. And so he wanted me to share that, and I wanted to kind of leave that out there as well. It's a real challenge to get community college support and others at the local level, to put people through these programs and others when they want to see what their return is.
That's our painful reality. Thank you for highlighting that.
And the reason I wanted him to share that is because just in the last budget, one of the things we did was we went in and put more money in the fields that we saw the highest need and return on. So it was everything around medicine, nursing and anything to do with healthcare. We put extra money in other high demand jobs. We put it in, but we didn't put extra teachers and everything, instructors in that. And I just think, that's just very simple. So what our challenge is how do we make it more profitable? Do we look at maybe making a certain percentage of those wages tax exempt? Do we do, what do we do? And we all need to be thinking, this is a smart group of research technology folks. And so we need to be thinking about what we can do to make those jobs attractive and to make them profitable and to make them, because we heard the four ladies that were up there, any of them still here? They've been teachers. They went back in the classroom, and the woman that takes care of babies, what do you want her to take care of your baby? She's doing it because she loves kids, and that's what we need to be doing. So it's 12:28. Does anybody have anything before I close this out?
I so appreciate you bringing it up because in my position, I'm constantly trying to convince people to keep the early childhood programs in the community college system, but it's not a high wage program, so it does that. And so what we have to do is we have to prepare them for a pathway into the field. And the sad thing is childcare is the gateway into the field. There are positions and the respect and a living wage if you move on through the trajectory. But what happens then is we leave our childcare field, desolate because people need to move on and make a living for themselves. And so I so appreciate you bringing that up. But the thing that resonated most with me today was the young lady that sat up here and said that she
needed respect. If we could fix a system where the people in the employees in our child care field, the professionals, have the same level of respect as someone that's teaching sixth grade. I think it would do a lot as far as retention in the field, but we do have a lot of work. But please advocate for your colleges to keep their program, because even though we are trying to fix a workforce, we still have to remember the children. That's what we cannot forget. We have children that need to be able to read. And that first year of life is when the two sides of the brain start learning how to communicate, which you need to read later, to be proficient a reader in fourth grade. And so as we're doing this, we do need to fix the system, but we can't forget our children. We've got to remember our children.
All right, we look forward to seeing you all the first Monday in June at the Albemarle Building. We'll spend our third meeting focused on finance and funding associated with childcare and early education. A work session to produce preliminary recommendations of our interim report, which is due to the governor sign by the end of June. Just some things I want to mention, childcare cost. The whole idea of childcare costing more than tuition at one of our universities, we need to be talking about that. We need to be putting that out so that people are thinking about it. Producing excellence, what success looks like. And Ann and I used to teach young marrieds all the time, and I would always say, what would you be willing to try if you knew you couldn't do? That's the way we need to approach this whole thing. We need to be doing that. And then the saying that I give every time I talk, if your presence doesn't make an impact, your absence won't make a difference. You guys are all making a huge impact by being here. It's 2:31. We're through. Sure.
Thank you for letting me.
You're always one of us.